So I don't know if you've ever had this happen where you felt like you and this other person came to a particular understanding, that you thought you were communicating, you thought you knew, you thought you were on the same page, but it turned out that even though like you were using some of the same words and some of the same language, you were describing and you had very different things in mind. So you thought you were talking about the same thing. Again, you were using the same words, but they meant something different to them than they meant to you. And it happens all the time, right? Like if you're married, that certainly happens for sure in your life. You asked me to do the dishes, babe. Like I heard you say, please do the dishes. And I told you that I would do them. But then you came home at halftime and you were mad that the dishes aren't done yet. And I heard you say, do the dishes, but you didn't say when. And you heard me say, yes, I'll do the dishes, but I didn't mean now. And it can be very confusing. Same words, same task, same ask, same answer, very different timelines. I've discovered, like my wife and I, we've been married 30 years. We have very different ways that we interact with time. And so we were going to some friend's house a couple weeks ago, actually David and Debbie's. And I was like, we'll be there between 5 and 5:30. And my wife heard me say that timeline. And when I give a timeline, I mean 5:30. She means 5 o'clock. And so it came time. It was like 4:40. She's like, we gotta go. I go, we got plenty of time. What is wrong with you? You told them we'd be there at 5. I was like, I did not tell them we would be there at 5. I said we would be there between 5 and 5:30. So I plan on pulling up right about 5:29. Right? Because very different versions of the same thing. We all have our own version of the same exact thing, right? Like someone invites you to go on a walk with them. And so you show up and you're just in jeans and your Crocs thinking that you're going to have a nice relaxing stroll through the park. But they're in like running shorts and tennis shoes and they got like a Camelback so they can stay hydrated. And they're like stretching and you're like, I've never stretched before ever to walk in my life. Like, why are we stretching? Several years ago, my boss, our senior pastor, Moses, he paid for all the campus pastors to go to a baseball game together. And I've been to, I don't know, maybe 15, 20, 25, 30 big league baseball games in my life. And I like baseball and it's always fun. But also, it was like really hot in Southern California. And I was kind of dreading it. And so I was just like, I almost didn't go. I was almost like made up some excuse to kind of beg off and not go. But then I got there and it turned out he had rented a luxury box for us. And that was a first for me. And so it was pretty awesome because not only was it air conditioned, it had its own bathroom, but there was also this amazing buffet of delicious food. And I was like, man, if this is what you mean by I want you to go to a baseball game with me, like I'll go to any game you want me to go to. I don't even care. I don't even care if there is a game. If you just want to invite me to a luxury box to hang out and have food, I'll do that too. Same words though, same basic thing, but we were describing very different version of that thing, right? Because that's because our experiences determine our expectations. And it's true, like your personal version of whatever it is that you're talking about is based on what you've heard, it's based on what you've seen, it's based on what you've experienced. And so what you expect right now is based on what you experienced back then. And this is, honestly, it's such a big deal because not only does experience determine your expectations, but then your expectations define whatever assumptions you make. And then those assumptions will almost always dictate the actions that you take in a given situation. And so my assumption that going, quote unquote, to a baseball game was that I was going to be sitting out in the hot sun, just roasting and just miserable and sweaty, fighting a million people to overpay for a very average hot dog and waiting in a massive line for my turn to pee in a giant trough. But that's not what it was. And I almost missed out because of my assumptions. Now, the biggest problem we all have, of course, is that we've all done things because of assumptions that were based on expectations that were shaped by our previous experiences, and we were right. This is exactly what I thought it was going to be. This is exactly what I assumed it was going to happen. That I should have known, I shouldn't have done this, right? And if we're talking air-conditioned ball games and ballpark buffets, like who cares? But we aren't, are we, when it comes to our assumptions and what we do? Because this is true in our relationships and in our jobs and marriages and friendships and most definitely in our faith. Those assumptions, those expectations, they impact the risks that we take. They impact the choices we make. They dictate the life that we choose to live and the person that we choose to become. Like, have you ever known somebody who had a string of bad relationships, or they had their marriage implode and it was really painful, and so now they think that maybe they're just not meant to ever find love and all men are definitely evil? Or maybe you grew up in a religious environment that was really harsh and strict and lifeless, and so for most of your life you've believed that God's probably out there somewhere, but if he is, he's not in a church. Or maybe you lived next door or worked with or related to some really judgmental Christians. And so when you find out somebody is a Christian, your instinct is just to sort of head the other way. Because, well, after all, they're all fake, they're all mean, they're all heartless, they're all hypocrites. And here's the danger in all of this, right? Is that we don't set out for this to happen, but if we're not careful, we will unintentionally fashion our future in the shape of our past. Because that past, those experiences shape our expectations, and the expectations drive our assumptions, and the assumptions dictate what we do, and so we just continue to live out in the future what we experienced in the past. I mean, wouldn't it be a shame to realize that you lived most of your life based on a set of incorrect assumptions, based on things that weren't true, but because you didn't know it, you lived as if they were true? And so it limited your relationships, it limited your opportunities and your possibilities, it limited you, it limited your life. And you missed out on so many great things, and maybe even the best thing, simply because of the wrong assumptions. So when you read the scriptures, this whole like using the same words but meaning different things, like we mean different versions of the same thing, that's actually one of the issues that Jesus had, the Son of God, when he was here on earth and walking among us. In fact, in John chapter 10, verse 10, Jesus says this, he says, "The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that they, meaning us, that you might have life and have it to the full." And so Jesus repeatedly went around and he was like, "I came to bring life. I'm the way and the truth and the life." And basically he's like, if you're not alive when you die, if you're still dead when you die, well then you're really, really dead. There's no helping you. You're like forever dead. And people were like, wow, that's kind of weird and confusing, and we're not 100% sure what you're talking about, but I don't know if you know this or not, Jesus, but we're listening to you, like we're alive, and so we're good. Like we don't really need to be alive-er. Like we're good. Thanks. Same words, but not even close to the same thing. Completely different versions. And so I was thinking about all this stuff this week because I was thinking about expectations and assumptions and how they shape our lives and certainly our faith. And we've been talking for weeks about fight songs and life anthems in this series and about how what we listen to, how it has a significant impact on our perspective and our attitude and our heart and the way we see ourselves and the world and other people. And as a result, they can determine whether or not we rise above and overcome, or we shrink back and settle for less in a given situation when life gets hard or when we're faced with a challenge or struggle. And so we've been looking specifically together at this song in the scriptures, trying to digest and internalize it in a way that helps us when we need it, the way that it did for the guy who actually wrote it. His name was David, and it's called Psalm 23, as we've been talking about. Today we come to the very end of the song, and the ending is epic. It's maybe my favorite part of the whole thing, because in some ways it illustrates perfectly this whole expectations and assumptions thing. Because David, at the end of this song, he describes the expectations. He lays out his assumptions that he's decided that he's going to live by. And so I want to invite you to read it with me. We're going to read it together. We don't normally do this, but I want you to read it out loud with me. We're going to read all of Psalm 23 together. Verse 1 says this, it says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever." Surely your goodness and unfailing love, Maybe you learned a translation like I did when you were a kid that used the word mercy. Surely your goodness and mercy, we sang that in the song, will follow me all the days of my life. What a declaration. So there are multiple layers to this, but I want to start with this in a place that's maybe not obvious at first glance. Have you ever known somebody who somehow had the ability to elevate whatever room they were in? We host a lot of gatherings at our house, and one of the things that we're always trying to dial in is where to set the thermostat when we have a bunch of people that are coming over, because I tend to run pretty hot. And so depending on who shows up, if we don't have the right starting point, it can be a disaster. I'm trying to talk, and I'm just sweating profusely and just miserable, and I want to kick everybody out and go home. We're not doing this today. Because the house might feel cold at the beginning, but as people start to show up, it's obviously going to get warmer and warmer. But one of the things I've noticed after hosting a whole bunch of you in our house is it's not equal value. Different people bring more heat with them when they come. Have you noticed that? And honestly, this is true in so many ways, right? Like if you've ever been in a room with people who are really, really apathetic, but then a person shows up with ambition, they change the temperature in the room immediately. Or a room where everybody's cynical and negative and depressed and worried, and they're all just sort of feeding off each other, and it's just kind of spiraling that way. But then a person walks in full of hope. I mean, it immediately changes the temperature in the room. And I think this is a big part of what David was writing about here. See, there's something is following you into every room and every space you step into. And the residue of whatever followed you into that room will linger long after you're gone. Every time you walk into a room, you get to choose what's going to follow you into that room. And so the main image of this song that David wrote is about shepherds and sheep, and God's the shepherd and we're the sheep. And I've, as we've been studying these verses the last couple months, I've read more about shepherds and sheep in the last 3 months than I ever thought I would ever know about sheep. But one of the things that came up repeatedly was that sheep have the capacity to both destroy, to ravage a piece of land, but also to restore it. That they can absolutely decimate it, or they can leave it better than it was before they arrived. And so a flock's reputation often precedes it. That what follows a group of sheep depends on what shepherd they're following. So people knew what they were bringing with them and what they'd leave behind when that shepherd and those sheep were coming onto that land. And so I wonder this morning for you and me, what reputation precedes you and precedes me? I wonder if people are like, what's she gonna criticize this time? Oh, here she comes. Here he comes. Who's he gonna complain about now? What drama or crisis are they bringing with them today? When people see you coming, when they see me coming, do they assume, what is it that they assume is coming with you, that's following after you? And I love this idea. I love what David's writing, but this is, honestly, it's so challenging because it's easy for us to just accept the status quo and sort of allow the environment to pull us down, right? Like, I mean, it's so easy to look like a leader when leadership is not needed. And it's so easy to love people when they're being lovable. It's easy to be hopeful when everything is going your way. It's easy to look courageous when courage is not required. It's easy to trust God when things are always working out. It's easy to claim faith when it doesn't take any faith for you to actually make it through your day. But I think that's what makes this song that David wrote, I think that's what makes it so powerful. Because it was when he was feeling lost that he writes about God being his shepherd. It's when he's in a desert cave that he's writing about green meadows and peaceful streams. See, when you begin to open the scriptures, and if you've been around church and you know some of the stories, like almost all the greatest moments, all the stories, all the verses that everybody knows and loves, they all happen in the middle of the worst environments, in the middle of the worst situations. I mean, everybody wants to be a giant killer, but nobody actually wants to have to face any giants. And so David is like, life in the psalm. He's like, life is full of dark valleys, and sometimes you look around and all you see is trouble and maybe even just enemies, but you still get to choose. You get to choose what follows you. So I wonder this morning, how does it feel to be in your wake? To be, after you come and go, how does it feel? Because of what's following you. Some people leave such a mess behind them everywhere they go that people are just cleaning up after them. You ever known somebody like that? Maybe it wasn't physical. Maybe they are physically messy, but maybe it was just relationally, or maybe it was emotionally. Like it's like everybody's got a brace. Like they're looking out the curtains. All right, they're here. Whew, deep breath, everybody. All right, we're going to make it. It's going to happen, right? And they just walk through and they suck the life out of the room and they leave everybody drained and everybody's a mess. But have you known somebody who's the opposite, right? They make things better. They build people up. When they walk into a room, everybody breathes, like they bring oxygen to it. Everywhere they go, people feel seen and valued and energized. So what is it that you are leaving behind? What is it that's following after you? David uses the words goodness and unfailing love. Can you imagine if that's what you became known for? Like that everywhere you went, that you left behind a trail of goodness and love. Now, of course, you don't have to be a person of faith to know that that would change a lot of things in your life. But if you are a Jesus follower, this isn't just like a good idea. This isn't like, wow, wouldn't that be great? It's actually the very reputation that he wants his followers, his flock, his herd, if we're sheep and he's the shepherd. It's what he wants us to be known for. And so you can find this stuff all over the New Testament, all over things Jesus said, but there's one particular place in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. It says this, it says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. So there are those two words again, love and goodness. And so he's going, look, following Jesus means you're living your life in a way that you leave a trail of love and goodness behind you. That you put in time and effort and energy and thought and intentionality to how you live. And you're going to live your life in a way that motivates and encourages and loves and uplifts people. So much so that your love and goodness actually leads to love and goodness on their part. That they become more loving. That they step into more good whenever they go, wherever they go. See, that's, I don't know about you, but that's what I want to follow me all the days of my life. And then, of course, there's the other more obvious side of this coin. The reality that God is chasing after you. And he's not chasing after you with judgment, but he's chasing after you with goodness. He's not chasing after you with a lecture, but he wants to chase after you with his love. If I'm being honest, I grew up going to church. My dad, we grew up in a really strict kind of Southern Baptist environment, and Baptists are great, but I had a lot of church baggage as I got into adulthood. And so when I think of God's goodness towards me, I tend to just really think about it in terms of he mostly just wants to make sure that I sit up straight and eat my veggies and follow the rules. I think of it in terms of just what's good for me. Yeah, I know this is good for me, but I'm probably not going to like it. It's like a workout. It's beneficial, but this wasn't my favorite thing. And it isn't all bad, because truthfully, there is part of that where God is for you and he brings good for you, and he wants to bring about good in your life. And some of that is just eating your vegetables spiritually. But the word that David used that gets translated as goodness, it's so much bigger than that. It encompasses that, but that's not where it ends. It's not just what's good for you. It's God being good to you. It's him taking care of you. It's him delighting in who you are. It's you having a life that's full of satisfaction and enjoyment. It's sunshine and tacos and coffee and giggles and oceans and music and dancing and wine and bread and rain and birds. And it's forgiveness and healing and strength and faith and a billion other things that make life beautiful and worth living. But according to David, that goodness is only half of it, because then the other side of it is that unfailing love. It's this really deep heart, soul, spirit kind of stuff. It's God's mercy and his grace and his faithfulness and his kindness and his acceptance for you. It's never-ending devotion. And so there's this, when you think about it, there's this perpetual feedback loop, that out of his unfailing love comes his goodness towards you, and out of his goodness towards you flows his unfailing love. And he just loves you, and then he's good, and then he's good, and then he loves you, and then it's just overwhelming. And David is like, that is what's following you. Actually, the English version it says follow, but the imagery is so much better than that. They're not just sort of stumbling around somewhere back there, sort of like, trying to keep up and, out of breath because you're just so fast and they can't keep up with you. No, they're in hot pursuit. They're running after, chasing after, pursuing you. They never give up. They never tire out. There's nothing you can do. There's nowhere you can go where they won't find you. They're nipping at your heels, but they're not going to tackle you and take you down. You have to stop running. I wonder, is that what you sense is always coming after you from God? Is that his goodness and his unfailing love and his mercy, is that he's going, don't. You got to stop running, because I have so much good for you. I have so much love I want to give you. See, God's heart is that you could live knowing that no matter how bad the world is, no matter how messed up it is, no matter how bad you screwed up, that his goodness and his love are right there. And honestly, this is not a denial of the brokenness of life or the pain or struggle or hardship of life. It's the recognition that no matter how dark life gets, that there's always light. It's trusting in God's goodness when life is anything but good. I'm not convinced that David felt like goodness and unfailing love were pursuing him when he wrote these words. But he's not trusting in what he feels. He's trusting in and writing about what he knows. See, the good life, and I don't have to tell you this, you already know this. The good life God has for you, it isn't a zero gravity life. It isn't a life free from struggle. The good life isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of meaning that redeems that pain. It's the presence of God in the middle of that struggle, in the middle of that darkness. It's God's light breaking in those dark places. It's God coming in the middle of our expectations, in the middle of our assumptions. See, this battle is actually won and lost in our hearts and minds, in what we expect and what we assume. And so David's like, I'm building my life on a different set of assumptions, on the goodness and the unfailing love of God. And then he concludes his song this way. He says, I will live in the house of the Lord forever. The longer I live, the more I'm convinced that everybody's looking for home. Everybody's trying to find their way back to the place that they've never been, the place that they were meant for, the place that God created them for. And when you read the scriptures, the message that runs from beginning to end, and from the moment that we severed our relationship with God and we walked away from our home with him, that God is inviting you and I, he's inviting all of humanity to come back home, to come to him. I can imagine David as he's writing this and thinking about the sheep as he was a shepherd, and the imagery that he was picturing, that the truth is, in the winter, the sheep return to the ranch. They come home to the ranch. And no matter what happened while they were out and away grazing, no matter how good of a little sheep they were, right? Or if they were nothing but a problem and a knucklehead for the shepherd, they still get to come home. There's never a time when the gate is locked or the door is shut. There's never a time where the shepherd says to the sheep, I don't want you anymore. You don't belong in this place. This is not your home. There's never a time where that happens. So I grew up kind of, as I said, in the church, and so I grew up on Christian music, and a lot of it was really bad. But one of my favorite artists has always been a guy named Michael W. Smith. Anybody know Michael W. Smith? Yeah, all the people that have gray hair know who Michael W. Smith is. But in 2003, Michael W. Smith released a song entitled Never Been Unloved. And it's easily, hands down, one of my favorite songs of his. In that song, he says, I have been unfaithful, I have been unworthy, I have been unrighteous, and I have been unmerciful. I have been unreachable, I've been unteachable, and I have been unwilling. I've been undesirable. Sometimes I've been unwise. I've been undone by what I'm unsure of, but because of you and all that you went through, I know that I have never, ever, ever been unloved. See, I don't know about you, but I've done a lot of dumb things. I've been a lot of things. So many of those unthings that he wrote about. But I want you to know this morning, you've never, ever, ever, for a single breath of your life, been unloved by the God who created you. See, I think part of the reality of what David writes at the end of his song is that God wants to redefine home for you to learn to trust in and rest in and live in his goodness and unfailing love. And so Ephesians chapter 1, verse 5, the Apostle Paul sits down and he's thinking about all this reality of God and Father and us, and he writes these words. He says, God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. I love that last part. See, he wasn't obligated to do it. He chose to do it, and it makes him happy. It brings him delight when one of his kids comes home. And it doesn't mean that you don't experience challenges. It doesn't mean that he's supposed to give you everything that you want now. It means that no matter what, that you always have a family. It means no matter where you go or how far away you get, it means that no matter how lost you feel, you can always, 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 always come home. And by the way, his family, it just isn't a free-for-all. It's not without expectations. I mean, Jesus said these words everywhere he went. He said, come and follow me. And it was an invitation for us to live in his goodness and in his unfailing love. But it was also a call to begin to pattern our lives after him, to live in a way that multiplies that goodness and that love to other people. See, God wants me to learn that I can be as giving and loving to other people as he's been to me, because his love is unfailing and his goodness is endless. And so I don't have to go around and making my own goodness, that God's goodness can just flow out of me. That his love can be given away because it's unfailing. Let me tell you something. When you experience a home like that, you can't help but want everybody else to experience that home too. Because his goodness and his love follow me all the days of my life. I can live in a way that his goodness and love follow me all the days of my life. That they're what I bring with me into every room. So when I leave meetings and I leave conversations and I leave meals and classes and parties and even arguments and discussions, when I leave all of those places, what gets left behind me are love and goodness. That should be our reputation. That's what should precede us. When people see us coming, they should assume goodness and love are on their way, that they're coming with us. They may think like, I may not agree with these people. I don't really understand everything that they believe, and I don't really believe everything that they believe. But I've heard about their shepherd, and everywhere that shepherd's people go, they leave people and places better off than they were before. Surely your goodness and mercy follow me all the days of my life. And so here's what I want to challenge you with this week. I want to challenge you simply to take notice, to be aware. Notice what is following you when you leave a situation. Take a few minutes even at the end of the day and think back to conversations you had at work, the conversation with that employee, with that boss, with that customer. Think back to the conversation you had with your kids or with your parents. Think back to the conversation you had with your spouse or a sister or friend. How did you leave those people? What followed you? What stuck around after you were gone? What did they feel when you were left? What's the reputation that precedes you in those environments? What's the reputation that precedes you with your family, in your job? Is it just like, oh, God, this guy's so flippin' lazy. Hey, how's it going? One of the things I've always done when I have had people working for me is in their reviews, I always go, hey, what are the jokes that people make about me behind my back? And I'm like, I want to know. I want to know, not because I'm mad, because that's what people really think about you. When you walk out of the room and they go, did you get a load of that guy? What are the jokes? And I usually ask the volunteers because they're willing to say that. You know, when people work for you, you're the boss, it feels threatening. The volunteers will be like, oh, dude, should have heard what the worship leader said. Really? Tell me. And here's the thing. If it's not goodness and love, right? If the reputation that precedes us isn't goodness, isn't love, then we have some growing to do, right? Like, then we maybe even have some unlearning to do. It's a sign that we need help learning what it looks like to live in God's goodness and his unfailing love in our lives, in our place, in our job, with our family. Because it means maybe you haven't come as far home as you thought you had come. One of the things I think that you can really understand from the scriptures is that when you begin to follow Jesus, like, we don't become more loving by trying to be more loving. That we become more loving by living into how loved we are. Because love changes everything. There's one last thing. So the last line of David's song, it isn't goodness and unfailing love will follow me all the days of my life. It begins with the word surely. It's emphatic. It wasn't like, maybe, I kind of hope, it's possible. Like if you go to church and you try real hard and you're a good person. No, it was as sure as the sun comes up. It's a no doubt, take this to the bank. You can build your life on it reality. And it's not one day, it's not some of the days, it's not a few of the days or even most of the days of your life. It's all of the days of your life. And it's not dependent on your performance, it's dependent on God's character. And so on your best day and certainly on all of your worst days, his goodness and his unfailing love, his mercy are chasing after you. I was reading an article recently and I read something that was a statement made by a psychiatrist that stopped me in my tracks. His name is Dr. Kurt Thompson. And it was not a spiritual conversation. It was about something else. But he wrote these words. He said, we are born into the world looking for someone looking for us. And I was like, oh my gosh. This guy just preached my message for me. Because I want you to know this morning, the person you were born into the world looking for you, that person is Jesus. And you don't have to keep looking for somebody looking for you because he's chasing after you. He came for you. He gave his life for you. The one that knows you best. The one that knows all the deep, dark secrets. The one that knows all the stuff you don't tell anybody. The one that knows you best loves you most. Can you imagine what your life, what your marriage, what your family and friendships and job would feel like if you truly believed that God's goodness and unfailing love were pursuing you no matter what? I mean, it'd change everything, you guys. It obviously would change your relationship with God. It definitely would change your relationship with other people and all the other people in your family and life. But it would 100% change the relationship you have with yourself, because it would change what you expect. It would change what you assume. When your eyes pop open in the morning, what you expect is going to happen that day. It would change how you live. It would change what you do. And his unfailing love and his goodness would slowly become the thing that you leave behind everywhere you go. Let's pray together.
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that he's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the 3rd way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the 4th way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, or whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that he can bless and anoint your finances, and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you, and thank you for watching our online service today.